Hey, I'm DrSCL. I'm a dad, a chiropractor, and the translator you didn't know you needed in this, the first year of parenting. This is Decoded, the first year, the podcast that turns baby brain confusion, mum burnout, and milestone panic into clarity you can actually use. Let's make sense of the chaos by decoding it together. Hey Mum, if you've been listening to this podcast, you'll have heard me say this a few times. Your baby isn't random, their movement isn't accidental, and their behaviour isn't a mystery. We need to talk about what comes before movement even looks like movement, and that's primitive reflexes. Have you ever been told your baby still has a reflex they shouldn't have anymore, and you suddenly start spiralling? You Google it, you check milestone charts, you start wondering if something is wrong. Primitive reflexes have become one of the most misunderstood parts of baby development. They're often spoken about like a diagnosis, like red flags, like ticking time bombs on a timeline. But here's the truth. Primitive reflexes are not problems. They are the original wiring plan of your baby's nervous system. They are what comes before movement even looks like movement. And today, I'm going to show you why these reflexes are not something to fear. They're actually the hidden driver behind rolling, crawling, coordination, feeding, sleep, all of it. And once you understand what they really are, the anxiety softens. Firstly, the phrase retained primitive reflexes is huge in the pediatric space at the moment. And without context, this phrase is easily misunderstood by both parents and health professionals. These are not problems to be grown out of. They are not glitches. They are the nervous system's original operating system. Primitive reflexes are automatic, brainstem-driven movement patterns present at birth. They exist for one reason only: to help the nervous system organize itself through movement. Each reflex has a specific job. Each one turns on at the right time. And just as importantly, each one needs to integrate at the right time. Now, integration does not mean disappear. It means control. When a reflex integrates well, the nervous system no longer needs it to drive movement, for higher centers in the brain take over. Movement becomes intentional, adaptable, and efficient. When a reflex doesn't integrate, it doesn't vanish. It just keeps influencing movement from behind the scenes. So, here's my best attempt at making this practical. Let's talk about the Moro reflex. Now, the Moro reflex is commonly referred to as the startle reflex. Now, this is something that I get my knickers wound up about. Technically, the Moro reflex is stimulated by movement, not by sound. So if you think of it as a startle reflex, you have to think of it as a startle because of movement. Now, its origins are that it is the nervous system's early alarm system. It fires with sudden changes in position far more than anything else. Early on, it is protective. But if it remains active beyond infancy, in other words, that's beyond about the age of 3 months, the nervous system stays wired for threat. And we will often see that in a child who is then struggling with postural stability, balance, sensory regulation, and even emotional regulation. And later on, walking can look cautious or rigid or overly fast and tense. Not because the legs are the problem, but because the nervous system never learned safety through movement. So, next on the list is the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex, commonly referred to as the ATNR. And this is a reflex that links head turning with limb movement. You turn the head one way, the arm extends, the other flexes. In early development, this reflex is essential as it teaches the nervous system how to coordinate the left and right side of the body. It is foundational, therefore, for things such as rolling, midline control, and those ever so important early crawling patterns. If the ATNR doesn't integrate well, you often see difficulty crossing the midline, and a classic one I see in early primary school age children will be difficulty reading as their eyes move from left to right on the page. You'll see asymmetrical crawling patterns, aka bunny hopping, bear crawling, etc. And you'll see challenges with bilateral coordination, in other words, hand-eye coordination. And when it comes to walking, you may see asymmetrical arm swing, poor trunk rotation, and/or compensatory balance strategies. And again, the milestones of crawling and walking may well be met, but the quality tells a very different story. Now let's talk about the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex's cousin, the symmetrical tonic neck reflex, and this is huge for crawling because it helps separate upper and lower body movement. The head goes up, the arms extend, the legs flex. The head goes down, the opposite. This reflex is what allows a baby to move into a hands and knees crawling position with organisation. When it integrates well, crawling becomes reciprocal, rhythmical, load-bearing through both hips and shoulders. But when it doesn't, you often see crawling being skipped. You see collapsing through the arms and fatigue, unstable hips, and a rushed progression into standing. And here's the key. If crawling is bypassed or poorly organised, the nervous system doesn't get enough opportunity to integrate this reflex, which means walking starts on an unstable neurological base. You've heard me talk about this heaps. Finally, let's talk about the tonic labyrinthine reflex. This is a reflex deeply tied to gravity, balance, and most importantly, posture. It influences flexion and extension tone, postural control, and the head-to-body relationship in space. In other words, if your eyes are closed, you still know where your head is with respect to your posture and body. If the TLR remains active, children often compensate by locking joints, overusing extension, and appearing very strong, but really they're just stiff. This is where early walking often gets misread as advanced because it looks confident, it looks strong. Mum and dad are excited because their child looks like they're ahead of everyone else. But it's driven by tone and compensation, not by control. So here's the reframe I want you to really hold. Milestones are not isolated events. They are expressions of nervous system organisation. Primitive reflexes are the bridge between the reflexive movement that we have with birth and safety and the voluntary movements we develop over time with confidence. If the bridge is unstable, everything built on top works harder. And the parents don't come into me saying, I think my baby has retained reflexes. They will say things like, my child hates tummy time, or they only roll one way, yet they seem very busy and unsettled. They get frustrated quickly. It looks like they're really strong, but I feel like they're constantly stiff. These aren't bad signs. They're simply clues. Clues that the nervous system is still organising early patterns. And this is why understanding reflexes reduces the anxiety instead of increasing it. Because now behaviour has context. So here's what this means for you as a parent. Primitive reflexes are not labels. They are not diagnoses. And they are definitely not something to be panicking about. They are early survival programs that should gradually integrate as your baby's brain matures through repetitious movement. If a reflex lingers, it doesn't mean your child is broken. It means their nervous system needs better input, not more pressure. And when we look at development through this lens, we stop chasing timelines and we start support wiring. Wiring happens through movement. If this episode gave you some clarity, please share it with another parent who's been confused by reflex talk online. And if you want a simple breakdown of what reflex integration actually looks like across the first year, make sure you're following me at Mount Hawthorn Chiropractic, particularly on Instagram, and you can grab a copy of my Baby Milestone Decoded PDF. It will help you see what matters and what doesn't. As always, Mum, you're not missing anything. You just needed the right framework with which to see it. DrSCL, out. Thanks for listening to Decoded, the first year, where we translate the mess of early parenting into something that actually makes sense. Be sure to share this episode with a friend, a partner, or a mum that you know who is quietly struggling through the noise and secretly Googling every milestone. If you want to hear more decoding, follow at Mount Hawthorn Chiropractic on the socials. Let's keep decoding the chaos. No mansplaining, no pressure, no judgment, just clarity when you need it most. Please note, this podcast isn't medical advice. It's just smart strategies from a Gonstead chiropractor, a dad, and someone who's been in the room with hundreds of mums trying to make sense of their baby's development, their own postpartum recovery, and the constant noise that comes with modern parenting. Always chat with your health team for specific care.